All right. Hello, friends. We're going to wait a few minutes before we fully get started as people can filter in here. We've got a few folks in here, but we did have about 50 RSVPs, and we are at about 9 people right now. So we're just going to say hello, and I'm going to song and dance, skip and stall a little bit here. But welcome. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us here for a little bit of time, and we're really excited to introduce to you the funding opportunity that we have coming up here, and what we're planning to do for our next 2026 funding cycle for grants for nonprofit organizations. Where as we filter in here, I'm going to just let you know, I'm going to repeat some of these things in a minute, but let you know that you're all unmuted. Stay on mute if you can. We allow you to speak, and so there is the ability to unmute, but we're going to ask you to hold that until the end when we have the Q&A, just so that we can make sure we get through all of our content, but still have prepared time. You can have your camera on, you can have your camera off. It doesn't matter to us one way or another. But later on, when you are asking a question, if you're possible, you can turn your camera on at least while asking the question. It'd be great to see and know who you are. It doesn't matter, though, if you leave your camera off. We will still answer your question. We're not making it a requirement. But like I said, to folks who were first here right away, we're going to wait here just a couple minutes, maybe a minute and a half, as we filter people in. We hope that you are able to get in easily here. We've got about half of the people who RSVP'd to the meeting are in now. So just a little more stalling. Again, appreciate a few more minutes. Again, appreciate you all coming here today, and spending some of your time with us. We've got some familiar names and we've got some new names. That's exciting. That is exciting.
Yeah. Very exciting.
So just so that I can confuse the people who were in at the beginning, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So song and stall and skip. So we're going to wait here a minute here, but just I'm going to go through the same things. Folks, you do actually have the ability to unmute, but we're going to ask you to stay muted until the end when we have a Q&A time, so we can make sure we get through all of the content for folks as we go through our prepared presentation remarks, and then we'll have that time that you can open up. You can, throughout the time, you can feel free to have your camera on, you can have it off. We will, at the end, provide opportunity for you to unmute, and hopefully you'll have your camera on at that time. We promise we will still answer your questions, whether you are on or off camera. But I would encourage you strongly to try to make funny faces and see if you can distract us while we present. So, that just for a little fun, these can get dry if we let them. So it's up to you and I to keep this thing going. We are a team here. So we will go ahead now. I think we'll go ahead and get started.
Sure.
This meeting is recorded, and we will be able to distribute the recording if you need to share it with any of your colleagues or other staff or other organizations who were not able to attend. For those of you who are on the recording and not live, thank you so much for participating and watching this. For those of you who are live, thank you for participating. One last time, I will remind you, we'll ask you to stay muted until the end. We do have a section, and we'll have time for Q&A. We'll be able to get through those. We also will be taking questions and providing answers that are submitted through email or otherwise later. And when we do that, we will continue to make sure that all questions we receive and answers we provide will be posted on the website, so that everybody is always having the same amount of information. So if you are here today and you want to ask a question, don't hold your question because you think you're going to get insider knowledge if you take me out to lunch. If you take me out to lunch, you just took me out to lunch and we had a great conversation, but you're not getting an insider track. I promise you that. One of the things I do want to mention is our process is designed so that we as staff are able to interact with folks in the community. It is a valuable part about how we exist. When the decisions are made, although we are a part of that process from an administrative standpoint, we as staff do not make the ultimate decisions. Our grant making committee, with support from us, makes them. So I just want to be clear that we are really intentional about being able, some foundations and other funders want to have a certain distance. We want to have a certain relationship and proximity. So it is important for us to design systems and processes that allow us to maintain positive and solid relationships with you all without it becoming a game of who made them the most, happy throughout the year, or who invited them to the most events, or who did those types of things. It really is about your projects and ultimately about how your projects will serve the community. As we'll go through here, we'll give you highlighted areas and ways in which we are trying to use our resources in partnership and relationship with you to benefit the Coatesville area community. And I will remind you, just because if anyone is on this call, there's some new names. If anyone is on this call and you do not know, the Alliance for Health Equity is a place-based organization. And so for us, your work will have to serve individuals who are in the greater Coatesville area, or organizations, or whatever. Your project needs to be place-based. And so if you are here and you're like, I've got an amazing project that is going on right now in downtown Philadelphia, we're not going to be able to fund that. So I just don't want you to waste your time. So if you want to drop out, if you are in that category, just understand our work is place-based in the greater Coatesville area. Most easily, well, not explicitly, but most easily defined as the school district of Coatesville's areas, the public school district of Coatesville. So those different townships and municipalities. All right. So with all of that being said, I am going to pass this over to my Senior Vice President, Isa Ostroff, and she's going to take the next slide. And so all funny faces to distract should now be directed at Isa, not at me.
Thank you, Kevin. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for this information webinar. We are very excited to see so many familiar faces, so many familiar names. I would say cameras are off, and so many new friends. And we are very happy to walk you today through our new grant program launch. And our goal today is just to make this process clear, accessible, and supportive as you prepare for your proposals. So just brief what Seed and Scale program is, or what Seed and Scale Match Fund is. In 2024, the Alliance for Health Equity launched the Seed and Scale Match Fund, a grant program designed to help greater Coatesville organizations seed new innovative ideas or scale proven programs, especially those addressing barriers to health and well-being of individuals and community at large. A defining feature of the Seed and Scale program is our collaborative match fund. So selected grantees receive an initial grant and then work with AHE and community donors to raise matching funds, effectively doubling, and in some cases more than the original investment, and then AHE matches dollars raised up to the initial grant amount. So our last Seed and Scale cycle, which was an 18-month program, and that ran from 2024 to 2025, we invested $320,000 in initial Seed and Scale grants, and through the match models, the organizations generated nearly $870,000 in total community impact, and that was almost tripling the original investment. Our previous grantees, wonderful partners, they expanded access to healthcare and mental health services in Coatesville, workforce pathways, there was education support programming, housing stability, food nutrition, and the programs reached thousands of residents, especially youth, families experiencing economic instability, our seniors, and also individuals facing health or housing barriers. And now the program we are launching today, our new grant cycle, just builds on that momentum. To Kevin.
All right, you're stuck with me again. Okay, so the grant awards this time are a little different than last time. The last time we started at $5,000. This time we're actually starting at 10. So the lowest grant amount that we will give is 10,000. The maximum is 50. Again, and I'm going to go over this in a second, but a reminder that what we are talking about is the initial grant amount. There are 3 phases to this. There is the initial grant amount. Then there is the amount that you all work to raise, and then there is the amount that we match of what you raise, but only up to that original amount. So if you get a $10,000 grant, it's a $30,000 opportunity. I'll get a little more into that later, but just wanted to let you know it's a little different this time. It's 10 to 50,000. So the last time we had sort of 7 categories, and they ultimately all fell into these 5. But in order for clarity, in order for some of you to be able to line up data, perhaps with other information that's happening in the community broader, we are going to focus on what are called the 5 conditions of the social determinants of health: healthcare access and quality, economic stability, education access and quality, neighborhood and built environment, and lastly, social and community context. Now, we don't have time to go deeply into the social determinants of health. You can certainly find a plethora of information online, but just a reminder that there are different proportions of a person's health that goes in there. And so we are not looking in any way about how those proportions are going to guide our funding. Just want to let you know that. So we're not saying like, oh, 20% of the health access is the amount that impacts a person's whole health from the social determinants of health. So 20% of our total dollars are going. We're not doing anything like that, but those are the 5 conditions and the 5 areas that we'll have to think about. So we've got healthcare access and quality, access to affordable, culturally responsive healthcare services, including physical, behavioral, and preventative care that support wellness across the lifespan. Economic stability, we're thinking about stable income, employment pathways, financial security that enables individuals and families to meet basic needs and build long-term economic mobility. So can they go up the economic scales? Education access and quality is access to high-quality learning environments, academic support, enrichment opportunities, which enable youth and children to thrive. Neighborhood and built environment. How are we impacting safe, stable, physical environments, including housing and food access, housing and food access that support healthy living and community stability, social and community context, strong relationships, supportive networks, and community engagement that foster belonging, resilience, and collective well-being. 2 real quick points I want to make. Number 1, I generally hate the word resilience. We use it all the time. I hate the word resilience because resilience is what someone does after they respond to an obstacle that has been placed in front of them. I would much rather live in a world in which we don't have to deal with resilience because we stop putting artificial barriers in front of people. So we should stop praising people for overcoming the crap we put in front of them. Unfortunately, the reality is we still put a bunch of crap in front of people's ability to be successful. So we live in the world that we live in, not the world that we want to. We create the world we want to while we live in the one we don't want to. So let's create a world in which resilience is not the type of thing we do, but understanding that the Coatesville community has those jobs. The other thing that I just want to mention is those are the things that we're defining, but also like wow us. Like don't be afraid to be like, it really feels like social community context, but it's not exactly one of the words they said. Wow us, and we will always choose best projects. So the match model. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I just want to give you a graphical to look at here. So we've got the initial grant award. Someone gets $20,000. One of you gets a $20,000 grant for a project. That project is very sort of explicit, laid out. You know, whether, again, it is a seed project, something that has never happened before, but you've always wanted to do, it was sitting on the shelf. You couldn't find the right funder, but you know this is going to be transformative. If you could find someone, those are the kinds of projects that we really want to see. But we also really want to see projects that are doing amazing and they're ready to scale, but you don't have funders who are interested in scale. They're like, you know what? Good job. Just keep doing what you've always done. Hold on, we want to tweak and blow this out of the water and do something bigger, more or bigger or slightly different, right? So those are the initial grant. You're saying this is what we're envisioning. This is how we think we transform the world. Great, fantastic. That's the first part. Then you have a time period to raise, it's about 12 months. You'll have a time period, and we'll go over this later, but you'll have 12 months or so to raise an additional $20,000. Again, on that original match. You are allowed to raise more than $20,000. We're not telling you to stop. If you've got someone who wants to give you 50, 100, please, absolutely. The point is that we will only match the initial grant amount. So our third portion there is the one-to-one funds up against that initial amount. And that's only because we do have a limited amount of dollars. So if one of you gets a $20,000 grant and goes and finds a $10 million donor, I don't have $10 million to match. So we have to put a cap just because we also have a budget that we have to live within. And so we've got the $20,000 initial grant, and then the $20,000 would be the additional. Obviously, if it's 50, it's 50, 50, 50. You get the point. You all are smart and competent people. If you weren't, you'd work in the for-profit sector, but you're in the nonprofit sector. sector, so I know you're smarties. So 20, total grant impact we look at here as 60. Now, the reality is if you raised that $10 million, we'd say the total grant impact is actually, $10,040,000. But we're just trying to simplify the match model here for the graphic. And then I, of course, try to complicate it in my explanation. So we'll go to the next slide before I confuse anyone any more than I probably already have. All right, so eligible organizations. We, as some of you know, we are in the process of launching another sort of CDFI entity that has lending and bridge loans and other things. If you've heard about that, separate your mind from that. That has a process that can be nonprofits and for-profits and whatever. For the grants, we do still need to exist fully within the nonprofit space. So you need to be a 501c3, public charity, or have a fiscal sponsor or fiscal agent or something. But our check needs to be able to be written to a nonprofit entity, a 501c3. I've already mentioned this, but it is really important that we remind it because we cannot really get around this one currently. Our resources came from the closure of the hospital, the Brandywine Hospital, and when it created the Brandywine Health Foundation, which is who we are, just a different name. When that created us, we are and have been place-based as designated by the Attorney General to the Greater Coatesville residents. We generally define that as the Coatesville School District boundaries. Capacity for grant management and reporting. So I really do want to make sure that this is an area that if you feel uncertain, please reach out to us. Don't say no. It's our job,
Linda,
to say, not yours.
Can I
Don't
give
say
you
no
these?
before we. Yeah, someone's gonna mute whoever that is.
Linda, can I give you these?
Whoever's talking to Linda, mute yourself, please. Thank you. But hi, Linda, also. So capacity for grant management and reporting is really important, that you're going to be able to respond to some of the questions and processes we have, which, again, similar participation in AHE cohorts. Part of this model brings together, we have lunches for the executive directors. We have different activities and try to bring in extra support where you're supporting one another as well as we're supporting you. And so we hope that you or a staff member could at least consider joining a cohort. Again, if we had last cycle, we had one who didn't participate quite as much because their home office was an hour and a half away, although their project was local. And so it was specifically that project was looking at supporting the community with on-the-ground resources, and that was great. But our capacity cohort was about bringing the CEOs together for lunch, and it was a big ask. And so that made sense. So that's where I say if you've got a particular unique situation, please reach out to us. And same thing, there's staff participation in our capacity building program. We continue to roll out. And the point here, and this is important for me to mention to you, is that while we are a funder, we want to be a resourcing partner. And being a resourcing partner means that when we write the check, that's not the end of our interaction. We want to find ways to support your success. Your success is our success. Your failure would also then be seen as our failure. And so for both of us to be able to work together to be successful, we need to think of different ways that we can bring other resources to continue to help you in your organizational success. Go ahead. Program eligibility supports individuals experiencing health-related barriers. Again, social determinants of health. We think of an expanded definition of what health is. Produces short-term outputs that contribute to long-term positive outcomes. Look, I used to run direct service programs, and I remember getting really frustrated when I would go to apply to a place and they'd be like, well, how are you accomplishing a 10-year outcome? Well, we're trying to focus on a day-to-day thing. I can tell you how that might happen, but maybe some of you, particularly smaller service-driven organizations, don't always have the ability to articulate the long-term outcome. But if you can say, look, we know that this matters, this work matters in being able to get to the next phase, the next step. That's what we're looking for. For some of you, you're going to be able to say, we've been part of a long process. We've got a whole longitudinal research project going, and this will help us scale into further outcomes. If you're confused about the difference between outputs and outcomes, that's okay. Feel free to ask that question and to have a conversation with us outside, and we can have those conversations as well. Please do not exempt yourself from the opportunity, because those very technical and academic conversations are ones you're not a part of. Using a culturally responsive approach, Coatesville is an extremely diverse community. if you come into this community with one cultural expectation and not recognizing that there are a variety of ways that people view the world, people view success, people prioritize their lives, you're just not going to be successful. It has nothing to do with whether or not your program is good or bad, but if you're not culturally responsive to a diverse community, you will struggle. And so we will look for that, as well as incorporating trauma-informed practices. Due to the nature of the Coatesville community, both on an economic level as well as others, there's a lot of trauma in this community. Again, if you come in to this community with a program that presumes that individuals have no or low ACEs scores, that trauma is not a part of their lives, that everybody can just pick themselves up by their bootstraps, there are no barriers, I'm going to tell you, people can't pick themselves up by their bootstraps if their boots have been taken from them and they have no straps. If you don't recognize that reality, your program's probably not going to be successful, either in implementation or, in our case, in funding. But I do wish you well as you continue to try to advance the interests of our communities through whatever process and practices you do. Just for us, our priorities do require culturally responsive approaches and trauma-informed practices. Thank you all. Now to my friend Lisette.
Hi, everyone. So it is open today. The link to the grant is on our website. Alyssa has a beautiful banner on the top. It's the first thing you see now when you go to alliancehealthequity.org. When you click that, you'll see that it'll take you to Foundant. And Foundant is the application process that we will use to receive the information and also to touch base with you throughout the process. If you have not registered for Foundant, you will have to create an account. However, when you go on there today and you click the link, we've enabled a beautiful little button that says preview. It is better for you to decide as an organization who will be your registrant in an effort to make sure that you don't dual register a participant, dual register a grant manager. Foundant is your friend, but it does not like when there's multiple contacts for an organization. So to not hinder your ability to start thinking about preparing, applying today, when you hit the preview button, you will see all the questions that are on the grant. Make good use of that if you have not decided yet who will be your account manager through the process, and then go ahead and create the account. So you can actively start applying once you create it, but today you will be able to see those questions by just toggling the little preview button that comes out. As Isa or Kevin mentioned in the beginning, and I know that Isa will go over it, any questions that you have, you will be able to field through a form, and we will happily get back to you, usually within a day, to discuss the process. Also questions like what Kevin just mentioned, if there's language, if there's things, please, no question is too small, and especially the technical stuff. Foundant is a great program, but from personal experience, I can tell you that sometimes technology is what it is. So please reach out with questions, take advantage and look at that. You don't even have to download it. When you hit the preview, the questions will be there for you to start considering today. And starting today, any questions you have, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisette. I am going to briefly talk about the grant cycle timeline. So here's the full timeline for 2026-2027 grant cycle. The application opens today. The deadline to submit the questions is April 10th. Applications are due on April 13th, which is Monday, 8 a.m. Proposal presentations will take place on May 21st. This is something that we added in this grant cycle, and that's when we review your applications. Applicants who make it to the first, from the first round, would be asked to come in and present, and we will communicate and coordinate with you in between those dates. Grants awards will be announced between June 15th and 30th. Grant periods begins July 1st, and that's when the matching period also begins. That runs through June 30th, 2027, so we have a 12-month matching period. We will host mid-grant update event in April 27, and that's when we invite our grantees to come in and present about the mid-grant period progress on their funded programs. We have a report due twice during this grant cycle. One is our annual report that starts from July to June, and then one is the post-grant report that is the last 6 months of your grant program. The grant program ends in December, and then after that, we just have a very short post-grant survey that usually comes out in January, and you usually have 2 to 3 weeks to fill that out. It's very compact, and then the final report is due in February. So please make sure you review these timelines because they are the important touch points throughout the grant cycle. Now we have some reporting and learning. This just explains the time period of different reporting that's due, and it is just designed to support continuous improvement and collaborations. So grantees, as I said earlier, participate in our mid-year grant progress update. We have 2 reports that are due. We also have a post-grant survey, but throughout the grant cycle, grantees take part in different convenings and learning sessions and storytelling activities and also site visits. And these multiple touch points help us to understand our partner's progress. We try to elevate your impact through storytelling, through interviews, and also just strengthen the network of organizations working across Greater Coatesville. Kevin and Lisette mentioned multiple times that please reach out to us with any questions. You can visit our website. All the information is there. Alyssa has put everything on our website, so it's very accessible. When you go in there, you can find everything related to our new grant cycle. Question and answer, there's a link that's also available on our website. So you submit all your questions using that link, and we will get a notification on our end, and we will try to answer your questions as soon as we can. And then Lisa talked about the fountain. Please get yourself familiar with the fountain if you haven't, and you can preview your application over there as well. And this is your Grant Seed and Scale Match Fund team. All 4 of us are here, and we are here to support you throughout the process. Again, any questions when you are working on your proposals, any kind of language, technical assistance questions, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will try our best to make this process as smooth as we can. And it's snowing outside when we had 80 degrees 2 days ago, so. And with that, I will end this part and over to Kevin.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and stop sharing the screen now. It'd be a good time if you feel like it to throw yourselves on your camera if you're not already. It is snowing. I was trying to figure out how to work that in, but there was no way because why? I saw green on the ground. I got excited. I was silly. So do we have any questions? Anything that anybody wants to ask right now as you've just received this? For those of you hyper extroverted verbal processors like me, now's the time. For those of you who are much more thoroughly thoughtful and want to submit a question later, you can do so as well. You can also put stuff up here in the chat or the Q&A box. Either one will work. I do see a hand raised. I'm gonna mess up your name if I say it, but I'm going with Harini.
Yes, Kevin, thank you so much. Yes, you got that right. All right, I apologize. I'm not able to be on my camera today.
That's okay.
But yeah, I have a hopefully quick questions here. One is, if the project is something that could be applied across priorities that you have mentioned earlier, is that going to be a part of the narrative, or should we tie it into a specific priority that you have?
Thank you. So this is a great question. We actually had our grant making committee just the other day, and this was a question they asked when we were showing them reports on the last grant process. And they were like, are some of these numbers duplicated? One of the principles that we're still trying to align with is a shift towards sort of a trust-based component, which is to say we don't want to overwhelm you with a whole bunch of extra work. So we don't want you, for instance, to create a whole new reporting category because you think it's going to please us. In an ideal world, you're already doing work that aligns with these interests, right? And so reports that you already are collecting will be able to be the information that you submit to us. So in a similar way, because we're not trying to ask you to create specific things, if you've got things that cross priorities, that's great. Let us know how you see that. If we see it different, there may be a time in which when we're doing our reporting that we're saying this project is in this category. And that's where it sits because we can't duplicate our numbers across multiple things. So we'll use, I like to think of this as part of what I like about being on this side of the table is we're able to talk about what our resources in congregate did in a community. You're still talking about what your resources in specific do in a community. And so there will be times where for us, it's important for us to say, there were X amount of thousands of people in all of the social determinants of health. And there will be times where it will be important for us to break those numbers up into different categories. So if you're helping us to see the world through your lens, that will allow us to be able to articulate the value in a way that we may not otherwise see. If you leave it up to us, we may not see the value in the same way that you do. So I would say your opportunity is to prove to us, not prove, but to demonstrate to us the benefits of what you're doing as you see them, because we're not going to otherwise necessarily understand it in the way that you do.
Got it. Yes, thank you. That's really helpful. I have another question, but I also see the same question repeated in the chat there by Carrie. So maybe I can be her voice as well. So is there a minimum organization need to raise does it need to match the initial grant? You mentioned about the
Yeah.
other end.
So that's a great process question. So the initial grant amount is an amount that we're committing when we see your application. We will give a check in full for the initial grant amount to get you started in July. The match component happens throughout those 12 months. And there's a minimum monthly payout, but we basically will do a monthly payout and match. And there's processes that we can work through. One of the ways that we make this relatively easy is we'll actually, like if an organization has a fundraising event and they raise $5,000 towards this program, we'll actually have them cut a check to us and we immediately within 2 days turn it back around to them with the money they just cut, because that verifies that the money was raised. And then we send back with the match component. So they get $10,000 right back. It also allows us control to make sure that we can write a document saying that these are restricted donations towards, sort of project. But I do want to mention that the money that you raise for the match needs to be broadly towards the project. It does not need to be line itemed out in the same way. And then our match also, we're trying to think of it as almost like a reverse funnel. We start small so we understand what the project is, but then as our relationship grows, we have a deeper understanding and trust of you. And so the dollars get less restricted as we go, because at that point, you're going to grow in ways that neither one of us could have guessed when the project was initiated, right? Things are going to change and shift, and we want you to be able to shift with those. So those are two little points there, but I do want to just mention that you'll get a chunk of money right away. If you don't match the total amount of the initial grant, so say you get that $20,000 grant, say over 12 months you only raised 10, we'll match that 10. We're not waiting for you to fully get to 20 before. It's not an all or nothing. It's a dollar for dollar match as you go.
Got it. Okay, and then you cap at the initial amount is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll let others chime in here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to look at the questions here I've got. Is it possible to get a grant to start a nonprofit to implement a program in the Coatesville area? No, because we would have to write a check to a nonprofit. Now, if you have been doing activities and you have a fiscal sponsor, and you're ready to start a formal nonprofit through the IRS designation, and we would have a fiscal sponsor you've been working with to write a check that would help towards that, it would be eligible. I don't know whether or not you'd have to make a compelling argument as to why that makes the most sense for this program. In the case of we're talking about seed, that could be one. I'm not saying it's a good or a bad idea, but you'd have to make the argument why that makes sense as opposed to just continuing with your fiscal sponsor. And I personally can think of reasons why the answer would be yes. I can also think of a bunch of reasons why I would say, well, that actually doesn't need to happen. Your job is to convince me and my committee and my staff in our process why that makes more sense to use resources as another program you could project, or what other partners we have here applying are. So if you don't have anything going, no, we wouldn't have anywhere to write a check to. I will also mention that part of what we will look for when we are reviewing your applications is whether or not you have a financial review, a financial audit, or you don't have any outside third party. None of those are particular disqualifiers, but if you don't have any track record at all, we have nothing to be able to evaluate whether or not you're capable of success. So that would be a huge hurdle to get over. Is there a minimum organizations need to raise doesn't need a match. I think I already answered that. Sorry. That was that question. No, there's not a minimum that they need to raise. I would say, and this is as best as I can say it, it's a little honor system-ish, right? Like our idea here is that and I would say that our previous seed and scale partners would I think agree with this, and I'm seeing Steve and others here, so you can watch him nod, but that by providing a match opportunity helped those partners to raise more funds, right? So by being able to go to a donor and say, hey, look, I got 1,000. If you give me 1,000 to match that, we'll get another 1,000, puts you in a really good fundraising position. So I would say you could probably go ahead and say, look, let's try to get a $50,000 grant, and we're not going to bother raising any more money because we don't want to have to bother with that, and 50,000 is enough. That's outside of the spirit of this grant. There's nothing I could do to punish that or whatever. But for the next time we run a cycle, we track what you did the last time. So if you get a $50,000 grant and you don't bother to raise a penny, the next time that we go to do a grant like this, we're probably not going to have as much faith and trust in you as an entity are going to be able to be successful. So you'd be better off writing 25 or 30 if that's possible, and then being able to hopefully match that on the other side. We will also put up on our website a portal for people to donate. So if it's a lack of technical components, like we will literally have a page for you. If you want me to come and speak at a fundraiser, I will do that. If there are other ways that we can partner, we are here to be a partner to be successful. So, are you able to provide more details about the matching process? I think I've done a decent amount of that. But I've got a second on Michelle's question. Does the matching need to come from fundraising or come from other grants? It can come from other grants if those grants are designed to support this project. So if you have a grant right now already, it's not eligible. It has to be new money after the selection. So you can't be like, hey, we already have a bunch in the bucket. Can we do that? Nope. Part of the design of this is to leverage dollars and to raise more money together. If you get this, we have had in the past, we have had partners who have said this helped them to get a grant. Sometimes there are grants that say you will need to find a match and they will be comfortable using this grant to match those dollars. If it's for the same project, we're fine with that. We have had some folks who have gone to an entity that gives grants and say, we have this, would you be willing to match? And they excitedly are like, yes, we love to find those because they like to leverage their dollars too. So grants are eligible as long as they're towards this project. So I'm trying to think about, like, okay, I'm seeing Ben Yoakum here, right? He's got the Creative Club, and he just recently got a Comcast grant, and I don't know the specifics of that grant, but he got a Comcast grant. So he can't apply that moving into this grant. But maybe that Comcast grant is going to come around again next year and he's going to go apply for it. If he goes to those, he's got a relationship with that funder and he says, hey guys, we've got this opportunity. And Comcast says, yeah, we love that. And then he shifts that project enough to work towards this, that's great. But if his project was not related to this whatsoever, he's not going to be able to match that. So just using as an example, like a specific funder, how that would work. So lean into your relationships. Amber is on a basic Otter plan with 30-minute meetings. To record longer meetings, upgrade in Pro. So Amber, you're going to need to upgrade there. Can the funding only benefit Coatesville residents? What if a program that prioritizes Coatesville as well as other communities? I'm going to give an example of a conversation that I had with the domestic violence shelter in the past. So DVCC is in Westchester, but they also work in Coatesville. And we were trying to explain like what would work in this sort of place. People go from one place to another. Well, let me give the example of like they want to have a texting service to be able to connect with their patients. Well, I don't want to say you can only pay for like a portion of the texting service. Like that texting service is going to help the residents here. It's also going to help other residents in your system. Like that's fine, right? Like we're not trying to be like you have to be able to draw a line from every penny to the exact end user. So in those ways, they can also benefit other communities. let me make it a little bit more problematic. If you have a staff member who is doing economic counseling one-on-one with clients, and they're a full-time employee, but half of their time is in Coatesville, half of their time is in Westchester, we would only be able to fund the half that's in Coatesville because the work itself in that case is direct to person and is really sort of time or individual tracking based. So I hope that helps. Finding a fiscal sponsor, that is a whole different series of conversations. Fiscal sponsorship world right now is a bit up in turmoil. Actually, itself, there's some of you may be aware of that. What I would say is that if you're interested in a conversation about how fiscal sponsors work or where you would find one or X, Y, or Z, you should reach out to Isa or Lisette and get on my calendar. You could reach out to me, but my email game is very bad. It's very bad. I apologize to anybody who is waiting on an email from me, including probably all of my staff members. But that's something I'd be glad to have. I would be glad to have that conversation. I can have that conversation with you, but probably not here and now. Do all services need to be physically located in Coatesville or targeted for Coatesville residents, i.e. housing? Dolly, I'm going to ask you to come off of mute if you can and maybe give me a little more context for that. Speaking of DVCC.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Again, you sort of responded to another question by using DVCCC as an example. My thought was that in addition to shelter, which is not located in Coatesville, but we do provide services for Coatesville residents, and also long-term housing that's provided for Coatesville residents, but it is not located in Coatesville. Is that a service that we can say that we are providing for Coatesville residents? However, it's not physically located in Coatesville?
Really great questions, Dolly. So one of them is easier than the other, to be honest. I have done enough work in my personal life and career with domestic violence to know that not always the best thing to house someone in the community where their abuse is happening. So I would say if you've got a victim of abuse and you're putting them in a shelter outside of Coatesville, but they're a Coatesville resident, whatever, you're putting them outside of Coatesville, and that is because the project for that person, their safety, makes sense to have them outside the community. Absolutely. That would make sense. No question. The housing one is trickier, right? Because on one level, many of us know that too much low-income housing concentrated in one area doesn't have positive long-term benefits for economic mobility in a community. And Coatesville has a significant concentration of low-income housing in this community, which inhibits economic mobility for those individuals. At the same time, we do want to think of this is sort of the outputs versus outcomes question, right? Like, if I could have control in 10 or 20 years, you'd have more mixed income housing throughout the entire community, including Coatesville, as an opportunity for people to be able to have economic mobility by knowing other people who own companies, who are in hiring positions, X, Y, and Z. That allows for a transformation, as well as improving the conditions of the housing stock in Coatesville, not just for gentrification of outside in, but for economic development of those who are in staying in. And so it's a little bit of a dicey one, because if we're thinking about just moving the population out, but we never change the conditions of the place, then we're just creating sort of a process of like a conveyor belt that removes people but continues to create the same people or attract the same people and continues to do that. So you've got an output that's not necessarily leading to a change in outcome. That's where I think, to use that example, if I can borrow that example, to say, two organizations can apply together to run a project. So is there something that's happening where DVCC is partnering with the Housing Authority and partnering with Habitat and partnering with whatever, and then the whole picture is saying, hey, we've got a person who's coming in a shelter who's then moving into temporary housing. So like I'm seeing my buddy Samira here, right? So someone goes into CYWA and then a shelter, the Drug and Alcohol Project, and then they end up being in temporary transitional housing. And then Dolly, they meet with you, and all of a sudden they're able to move outside. Now I can see now I'm seeing a $50,000 project that has 2 or 3 partners together who are being able to say, we recognize that we are a important moment solution for a problem that is urgent now, but that our solution doesn't then tie into something else. But hey, and we're not going to solve the whole train, but now we're at least articulating where their output leads to our output, which leads eventually to someone else's outcome. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
Okay.
And thank you.
Absolutely. Any other hands or anyone wanted to ask a question live? I do see Kathleen, and I did mention yes, but I'll verbalize it here. For those of you who were first seed and scale round applicants, you are able to apply for this round. Here's what I would encourage. And again, I'm not a decision maker, so you can throw out everything I say. But I would encourage you to think about if you were a seed and scale recipient, particularly if you were more on the seed side than the scale, and you're coming back, maybe scale what you were doing before. It was successful, and now you want to take it to that next level. I would probably not encourage you to say you were a project and you want to fund it just because you're looking for sustaining funding and you're not going to scale it and you're not going to do anything different with it. Probably not going to be the most compelling applicant. But hey, again, none of us know what applications will come in. So if that's the best application, then that's going to get funded. But I would just say you'd probably want to think that. Or you maybe have a completely new project that you want to seed or scale. But there's no conventions limiting previous seed and scale applicants from applying. I will also say, though, that you are in the unenviable position of none of us knowing, wow, it is really snowing. This is wild. Of the unenviable position of if you had a seed and scale project in the first round cycle that we did, and your project was amazing, we're going to have positive vibes. If your project struggled, whether on implementation or you didn't participate, in the various activities or you didn't meet the match, the committee will be informed whether or not you met the match. The committee will be informed whether or not the project, they'll have all of the outcome reports and all that stuff. So, I would just say, think about that. If you had a project that didn't do well and you come back and ask us to do nothing different, but if you had a project that was great and it's ready to move further along, that will also be part of the conversation as well. Does that help? Great. Steve, you good? Awesome.
Hi, it's Harriet Meyer with AHA.
Hey.
Hi. Our AHA is, for those who might not know, Arts Holding Hands and Hearts. And I am new to the fundraising committee and believe there's a rumor going around that we may have received a seed and scale grant previously.
You did not receive a seed and scale grant. You did previously receive funding. You were either a well-being fund or a community impact grantee. I'm not sure. It was a different program, but you have been a funded partner with us in a recent past. Yes.
If I can chime in, it was the Collaborative Innovation Fund.
Sorry, Collaborative. Thank you, Alyssa.
Yeah,
Thank you, Alyssa. Collaborative Innovation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the information. If I wanted to get, I'll try to pry the information out of our ED, who is currently off to see her mother for her 93rd birthday. But if I need more information, I can reach out, make an appointment, or catch up with somebody there. Okay.
Absolutely.
All
So you were a Collaborative Innovation Fund previously. You I believe may have applied for seed and scale. So I just realized I want to be clear. I don't remember if you applied and didn't get funding for seed and scale, but I do know that you were not one of the 17 partners in the last round.
Okay, thanks. That helps a lot. Appreciate it. And thank you guys for doing this. This is fabulous. I worked 25 years ago as the corporate director of fundraising for PBS in Washington. We never had anybody to go to this great length to give us information about money they wanted to give us. So this is
Well, thank you.
fabulous.
Well, thank you.
Beyond belief. Yeah,
Thank
dream
you.
come true. All right,
Thank
thanks
you.
so much.
We're
Sure.
absolutely grateful for all of your time. I mean, we have the opportunity here to form a partnership with some of you folks. It's going to be, 18 months. We're going to spend the next 2 years together with some of you folks. And so we really want to make sure that we can find projects that are going to be worthy of the resources, worthy of our time, worthy of your time. And we hope that we're a good partner for you too. Like too often this funder relationship is a power imbalance. And it's really good for the funder and it's not great for the funded. And we really do authentically want to have great relationships with you all as partners in a way that we work together moving forward. Again, so I've got a what's the best way question here from Annie. Isa Lisette, can you just drop your emails there in the anybody else? One of the things that some of you will come to know about me is I love to end a meeting early if we can. I'm not saying I always do. I just want to be clear that I like when it happens, not that I'm good at it. But if there are no further questions, we'll be glad to give you back your time here. The recording will be shared. We will make sure that that is shared. It will also be posted. I mentioned this earlier. I want to make sure, actually, that's a good point that some of you got in later. I want to make sure you have some of this information. So we will post any questions that we get. We will post online. So what that means is, while we will have some in-person meetings if necessary about this project, it will be limited. They will be largely limited to online meetings. And the reason why is we can record them and make sure that we're giving everybody the same information. We will not post the recordings of those conversations, but we would then use the tools of recording and transcripting to be able to pull out those questions and those answers so that everybody gets something equal. So we can meet with you in person otherwise for other things, but if they are questions related to seed and scale, we'll want to do that digitally so we can make sure that everybody has the same information. We will post those things online, and we will also any emailed questions or other questions. So this video will be posted as part of that information ongoing, so everybody has the same information. We're trying to be as equitable as we possibly can.
Yeah, everything will be on our website, and as Kevin said, we will have FAQ section, and it will be like updated, and as we receive the questions.
Ben, great question there. How many recipients this round? So there are two things that I can't tell you exactly at this moment. One is we're still finalizing the total pool. We're trying to find some other co-funders potentially, but we're trying to finalize the total pool. It'll probably be at least 500 total. So 250,000 on the front end, 250,000 on the back end. It might be more. Last time it was 320. So I'm just giving you a conservative number because I don't have the hard and fast from my finance committee. That determines in part how many recipients. So if everybody applies for a $50,000 grant, there's going to be less grants. There will be times where we may see a grant from you, and this is part of there's an in-person presentation. Part of that is for clarity. So we may receive a grant from you and you say 50,000, and we're looking and we've prioritized our grants, and the last $25,000 left is an application for 50,000. We can't fund that. So we may have a conversation with you and say, hey, we're going through and we could only allocate 25,000 for your project. Is your project still viable at 25,000? You may say it's not. Okay, we're gonna have to go on. If everybody applies for $10,000 grants, we're gonna have a whole lot more recipients. So I can't tell you how many recipients because it is dictated by total pool broken out based upon then what the grant dollars and amounts are. I can tell you that our minimum goal is 5. So if we end up with 250,000 and you had 5, it would be, and you have 5 social conditions, our work, we don't want that. That's not what we really want. It works better if there's more programs, but we respond to what we get. So if we had 5 conditions and we had $50,000 projects for each of those 5, and that would be the 250,000, that would be the minimum. We really do, going way back to someone's question about categories, we really do want to have at least something to be able to talk about all 5 conditions of the social determinants of health if we only get 4 social determinants actually applied for, and we can't find one of those that fits in the other category, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Like, I'm not sure if we might go shoulder tap people or if we'll just only have 4. Like, I don't actually have that answer, and I hope I don't have to. But that's the best I can give you. All right. Well, thank you all. I want to thank my teammates, Isa, Lisette, and the silent one, Alyssa, who's feeling a little under weather today. Please feel better soon, Alyssa. I'm deeply appreciative of my teammates here. I'm deeply appreciative of you. I know many of you, and I don't know all of you. And I would like to say that we occasionally do events. We have a March Madness event next Thursday, which is a mini fundraiser for us. All of the net proceeds will fund this program. You know, whether it's that or our free community block party, we'd love to see you to get to know you. And if we don't know you, please find a way to reach out to get to know us, whether we fund you this round or not. Our work is done best because we know community members and we know community serving organizations. If we don't know you, that doesn't help us do our work. So please don't be a stranger. We'd love to see you, whether it's at our events or whether we just reach out and we have a meeting in the office or we do a walkabout around town. Thank you so much for the work you do. Thank you for who you are. Thank you, each of you, for how you change the community for the better. Have a wonderful snowy day. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.